An old childhood friend moved back to my state after settling in Hawaii for a couple of years. I was so happy to see her, and of course we immediately planned to have a sleepover at her house. When we got to her house, we immediately decided to go camping in the backyard, just like we used to when we were neighbors in the suburbs. I brought my suitcase into the tent, and we set up our sleeping bags. We left all of our stuff in the tent, and then went back inside to watch movies. As the night approached, my friend's mom said she needed to get something. It's kind of fuzzy. I don't remember if she needed groceries for dinner, or if she was going to pick up the younger brother, but the two of us assured her we were fine on our own, and she ended up leaving for a while. Of course, we were excited when she left. I pulled out the candy that I had brought, and we queued up some movies that we weren't allowed to watch. I believe it was The Hangover. We ended up watching 2 movies, and before we knew it, it was 1 in the morning. The living room we were in was right next to the front door. Next to the front door was a huge bay window. All of the lights were on inside the house. It made us feel safer since we could see everything around us, but it also made seeing outside into the pitch dark impossible. We started up our 3rd movie of the night, and it was kind of an unspoken agreement that the camping idea was out and that we were probably just going to fall asleep on the couch. But before we could get too comfortable, her dog started barking. My friend was kind of annoyed but also confused because her dog was normally pretty quiet. After a couple of minutes, we managed to quiet down the dog. We continued our movie for another 5 minutes before there was a loud knock at the door. Me and my friend froze. We looked at each other, confused as to who it could be. We didn't see her mom's car pull into the driveway, and with how dark it was impossible to miss. Again, we were in the middle of nowhere, 2 14-year-old girls, alone. We paused the movie and just listened for a minute. I got up slowly, trying to be as quiet as possible, and tiptoed over to the front door. It was unlocked, and with a quick glance behind me, I could see that the back door was open. I was starting to freak out. I locked the deadbolt, and not even a second later, the knocks started again, but louder and more violent. I screamed at my friend to call the police and ran with all my might to get to the back door, slamming it shut. I tried to lock it. Her back door was kind of jerry-rigged to shut, and I struggled to lock it for a good 2 minutes. The longest 2 minutes of my life. After I locked the front and back doors, I ran to each light and turned all of them off, and then I finally got the courage to look outside. I peeked through the plastic blinds at the front bay window of the house and could see nothing but darkness. Another round of aggressive knocking started, and I literally dropped to the floor, so scared I couldn't even think. I just wanted to hide and make sure that I was out of sight. I watched from the ground, peeking my head around the couch as the knob to the front door twisted halfway and jerked. The door rattled as someone yanked it and tried to get in. I felt a hand on my foot, and it took all my willpower not to scream. It was my friend. She brought her finger to her lips and motioned for me to follow her, and the two of us crawled to her mom's room with the dog. The dog was going crazy now, barking and whimpering. We crawled over to her mom's nightstand. It wasn't until then that I realized that my friend's phone was dead and that mine was still in our tent. My heart sank. It took a good 3 minutes before her phone turned on, and we immediately called the police. A very nice woman answered our call and told us to stay on the line. It was going to be 15 minutes before the police arrived. At this point, the knocking had stopped, and after 5 minutes of sitting in her mom's room, I gathered the courage to go back to the living room. I double-checked the locks on the front door and went to double-check the back. As I walked to the back door, however, I noticed there was a light outside. I ran to the kitchen window and could feel my heart turn to ice. The lantern in our tent was on, and I could see the silhouette of a large man going through my suitcase. I called out to my friend, and she told me to get away from the window, which I did reluctantly. Soon after, we could hear the police sirens in the distance, red and blue lights flashing through the plastic blinds on the living room window. 3 police cars rushed into the driveway, and an officer immediately ran towards us. I shouted that the man was around the corner, and apparently, it was a foot chase that ended with the guy escaping into the forest. My friend's mom had arrived home minutes after the police showed up and said that she turned back from where she was going because she had gotten a horrible feeling that we weren't safe. She said that mother's intuition told her to turn around, and that when she pulled into the house with police cars, she was terrified but glad that we were safe. I thank God, or whatever is out there, that we decided to stay in for a movie night instead of camping. I don't know if that man wanted to hurt us or rob us. In fact, none of my stuff was even stolen from the tent. But I have a feeling it would have been a very different tale if we had done anything differently. Me and my older brother were staying home alone in a small town in Ohio, with fewer people in it than my mom's graduating class in the city we came from. My brother was grounded, so both the house phones and our cell phones were locked in my dad's gun safe, which neither of us had the combination of. My parents said that they were going to go check on my grandmother and that they would bring back pizza for us. That sounded good enough to 7-year-old me and my 14-year-old brother. We played video games for a while but started to get hungry and wondered when my parents would be back. After about 2 hours of them being gone, I heard a knock at the door. I went downstairs, pretty excited for the food, and my brother followed behind me after saving the game. We walked up to the door, which had a large window in it, and saw that it was not my parents. It was a very tall, lean, white man with short black hair and a scruffy beard. He looked to be about 35 years old. It was weird because everyone knew everyone in this small town, but I had no clue who this was. I held up my finger at the man, as if to say, "1 second," and then closed the curtain. I turned to see my brother staring at the door in a bit of disbelief, because he had seen the man too. Within seconds, the knocking turned to pounding. The doorknob started shaking and rattling. We were terrified. With no way to call our parents, my brother grabbed my hand and dragged me into the kitchen. He grabbed a knife, and I distinctly remember it breaking in his hand, and then he grabbed a different one. We hid in the laundry room and held each other. We heard banging and yelling coming from the front door. It had been about 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Then, the front door started to open. My brother was ready to jump up with his cheap kitchen knife and defend me the moment the dude attacked us. Instead, my mom rounded the corner, holding 2 pizza boxes and wondering why her 2 kids were in a crumpled heap of tears on the floor. We both stood up and ran to tell her about the man outside, but we were met with laughter. My dad was outside talking to him. She said that he was asking about buying a broken-down car that had been in our driveway for a few months, and apparently he was a mechanic. Why would a grown man pound on the door like that, shake the handle, and try his very best to get into a house with no adults home? Why would someone want to talk about a car that didn't have any sort of for sale sign on it so late at night? Something in my gut, being an adult now, tells me that the man was trying to hurt us. I don't want to know what would have happened if my parents hadn't come home when they did. It was a normal night, about 9 p.m. Me and my little cousin were at his house. I was babysitting for the night while my mom and aunt went shopping, and my dad and uncle were at the movie theater. We were just sitting there watching TV. I was feeling really strange for some reason. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it, so I just kept watching TV with my cousin. The feeling wasn't going away, so I got up and walked to the back door to lock it. When I came back through the kitchen, I saw what was causing my weird feeling. In the window, there was a very frail and homeless-looking man. He was just staring into the window, looking at my cousin. My protective instincts kicked in. I pretended like I didn't see the guy, and I told my little cousin that we needed to go upstairs because our parents would be home soon and they wouldn't want him to be up so late. So then I went upstairs and put him to bed, knowing sure well that there was a man outside who wanted in. I was about 125 pounds and 5'8" at the time, and I played football for my school. I went downstairs and straight into the kitchen and grabbed one of those meat tenderizing hammers. Then I turned back to the window where I saw him before. He wasn't there. I ran back to the front door and checked that it was locked. Both the deadbolt and the knob were locked. I ran back upstairs with my meat tenderizer, went into my cousin's room and sat down in front of the door. He asked me what I was doing, and I said that he didn't need to worry about it and that he should keep his head low. I called the cops and then my dad and uncle after. The cops would take half an hour to get there, and my dad and uncle were 45 minutes away. Then I heard a window shatter and the sound of heavy boots walking around on the main floor. I told my cousin to stay calm, hide under the covers, and stay absolutely silent. I could hear the guy walking around downstairs. It was horrifying. I gripped that meat tenderizer and waited. About 5 minutes passed, and then I heard the boots walking up the stairs. At this point, I was having a freaking heart attack. My cousin's door is no more than 10 feet from the stairs. I heard him opening the door to my aunt and uncle's room, and then the bathroom. He walked back downstairs, and I heard him open the door to the basement. 15 minutes later, the police showed up and burst into the house. It turned out that the guy was loose from a mental hospital 100 miles away.